Cloud seeding, bringing back extinct animals like the dire wolf. Humans playing God. Yeah, what possibly could go wrong? Let's talk about that.
Instead of focusing on winning arguments, we're teaching the basic fundamentals of sales and marketing and how we can use them to win in the world of politics, teaching you how to meet people where they're at on the issues they care about. Welcome to The Brian Nichols Show.
Well, hey there, folks. Brian Nichols here on another fun-filled episode of The Brian Nichols Show. I am, as always, your humble host, joining you from our lovely Cardio Miracle Studios here in sunny Eastern Indiana. The Brian Nichols Show is powered by the best heart health supplement in the world, Cardio Miracle. So if you want to learn more how to lower your resting heart rate, lower your blood pressure while improving your pump at the gym, stick around. We'll talk about that later in today's episode. But first, let's dig into, this very, very controversial topic, humans playing God. That is the topic of conversation, and we're going to be digging into different areas where humans are doing just that, whether it's trying to bring back extinct beasts from literal prehistoric times or trying to play God and make the world rain, with what we're seeing right now with the cloud seeding. So to discuss all that and more, joining us from ACC is Isaiah Menning. Isaiah, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Thanks so much, Brian. Great. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, bud. Looking forward to today's conversation. I apologize. My potato computer here is being a little jittery for whatever reason. It must be the heat and the humidity. I was talking about corn sweat with our buddy Connor Vasile here on the show last time. It's so humid out in the Midwest, and it's because of that darn corn sweat, Isaiah, which I didn't know was actually a thing. But alas, here we are. Humans still playing God, man. What the heck? I'm just teasing. Let's go ahead and jump into today's conversation. But first, Isaiah, do us a favor. Introduce yourself here to the Brian Nichols Show audience and why you're focused on trying to play God.
Well, thanks very much again for having me on, Brian. So happy to be here. My name is Isaiah Menning. I'm the External Affairs Director at the American Conservation Coalition. And at ACC, we're focused on building the conservative environmental movement. And today, I'm really excited to be talking to you about disruptive environmental technologies, what lots of people call playing God, particularly the technologies of cloud seeding and de-extinction. And the reason why I'm so interested in this, it actually goes back to my deeply held religious faith, my convictions there. So I'm a strong Christian and believe that human beings actually have authority to have dominion over the earth and that we need to use that authority really wisely. And so that brings us to questions of cloud seeding, to de-extinction. I think that framework is really quite a bit different than what the traditional environmental left has to say about things, which is very restrictive to human activity. It sees people as the problem. I see our role as cultivators of the earth. And so excited to talk about that with you today.
Looking forward to it, bud. And let's kind of set the stage here, right? Because you look at where everything has been going, and I'm going to rewind, as short as 5 years ago, but we can go back 50 years ago. We've seen, especially from both a claims perspective, right? I'm old enough to remember back when I was in high school, and we were forced to watch Al Gore's An Inconvenient Truth. That's John Kerry, but Al Gore and his inconvenient. I don't know what John Kerry or Al Gore's voice is, but John Kerry is Inconvenient Truth. We were required to watch that, I remember, in biology class. And we're talking about global warming and the end of the world because the sea levels were all going to rise and the polar bears were all going to be floating in the ocean, and it'd be really, really sad, right? But then, rewind 20 years before that, and generations before me, we're talking about global cooling, right? And the world's going to freeze. We're going to have a giant ice age. And it's going to be horrible. And then you fast forward to where we're at today, and it's all climate change, right? The climate's changing. We have an increase in hurricanes and tornadoes and droughts and all that kind of fun stuff. And then you couple that with what we're seeing right now with what we talked about earlier, the de-extinction projects, where we're taking long lost animals and we're saying, what if we were able to bring back this, extinct saber-toothed tiger or this woolly mammoth that hasn't walked the earth in literally tens of thousands of years? And I mean, look at what happened during COVID, right? We were told to trust the experts, trust the science, and don't you dare raise up any concerns or questions about any unintentional consequences or externalities, right? If you did, you were labeled a bad person. So I think there's a lot of folks right now, Isaiah, who look at this whole And again, I'm obviously being a little tongue in cheek, but this whole playing God thing, right? And they
Yep.
are looking at it with a healthy dose of skepticism. And I would dare say that that skepticism is well deserved at this point. But to your point, there seems to be a lot of value coming from some of these different ideas or these different solutions that are out there. So I want to give you the floor to just help maybe dispel some of the concerns, dispel the preconceived notions. Like, I'll give you the platform. Make the best pitch for me. Like, what? Why do we need Isaiah to have the saber-toothed tigers from literal prehistoric days walking amongst us? Why do we need to be able to go ahead and seed clouds to start pouring rain using sodium iodide? Help us make sense of it.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. I think that it might be helpful to first identify what the North Star is, right? Like, why is it that we do any kind of environmental policy, any kind of environmental management? And I'd say the reason why we do that is to cultivate the earth for human well-being. And the reason why we do that is because human beings are the most important thing on the planet. And like I was alluding to earlier, the environmental left doesn't tend to see it that way. I start with that position, that I want the end point of my environmental management, my environmental policy, to be human well-being. And so the question is what we do about that, right? And I think that you're right. Like, people have good reason to be skeptical of what many of the so-called experts, and especially what the government is trying to say, and especially when the government is doing things that kind of tend to steamroll or push over, smaller people who are just trying to make their way. And you cited COVID, you cited overly alarmist positions on climate change. All of these things have really come to light as examples of reasons why it's probably not in the best interest of the country to trust necessarily and totally scientific experts, especially from the government, who are trying to tell you how to run your life. So with those two things in mind, like the North Star is human well-being and human flourishing. And secondly, it's good to have a healthy skepticism of any kind of environmental intervention. We come to the question, like, what then should we do, regardless of any of these questions of climate change or anything like that? What should we do to maximize human well-being? And in the case of cloud seeding, I'd say, and I'll start there, it's good to have more water on the landscape. And this technology of silver iodide, where you put silver iodide into the clouds and it causes more abundant water to be there, that's a good result. And the question is if it's safe or not. And the data are really quite clear. It's very, very safe. Silver iodide is actually less toxic than salt itself. And so, for instance, the cloud seeding operations that are happening in the Bear River area in Utah, where I'm from, are essentially akin to throwing 1 grain of salt into a swimming pool. That's like the amount of that's the amount of toxicity that you're getting from doing any kind of cloud seeding operation. And so for a state like Utah that needs more water, using that safe and proven technology is really quite important. And I think it's wrong to say that it's playing God because, like I said earlier, I think that we as humans have authority to do things to the earth and to intervene with the earth to our benefit, right? Environmental leftists are wrong when they tell us that we can't farm on the landscape or we can't hunt on the landscape. Human beings have been doing this for as long as human beings have been around. We've been intervening with the landscape. And the question is how to do it wisely. Cloud seeding is a way to do that wisely. I think that de-extinction maybe even might be a way to do that wisely as well. Where, I'll say it again, back to the Bible, which is kind of where I get my inspiration for what's true. It says in Genesis 1 that God said, let us make man in our image and our likeness so that they may rule over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the air. De-extinction is a process by which you can rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air in a way that is good for human beings. And so, for instance, we might be able to use genetic technology to revive the American chestnut, to put it back across the South and revive this kind of really important tree that was critical for American culture in the American South, which could be a really big boon to revive that kind of culture around chestnuts roasting on open fire. I don't know about you, Brian, but I've never had a chestnut roasting on open fire. That's an endangered species that we could use this amazing technology to bring back and to have more of it. And I'm here to do that and to use our technology to support human well-being in a smart way that's bottom up.
So there was one line in your article about the cloud seeding. I just want to laser focus on this line really quick. You said available evidence does not support these concerns, being that sodium iodide and cloud seeding could be, detrimental and horrible for human civilization. But recent studies show that the current use of silver iodide has no negative health effects, and cloud seeding can't create hurricanes. Natural clouds are needed to do any cloud seeding at all. Fair. However, my question is, does that not feel like we're potentially dismissing caution prematurely? Because and maybe I'm a little old fuddy-duddy here, but in my experience, the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, right? Especially when you're dealing with these long-term exposures. There's these cumulative ecological impacts that we might not be able to understand until you extrapolate it out 10, 15, 50, 100 years, or frankly, under research edge cases, right? Where maybe we look at, to your point, like silver iodide isn't having, long-term negative health impacts right now, but hey, what about if we were to dig into the long-term bioaccumulation that has not really been focused on in these studies, right? Like, let's look into the ecological layers, like the water table contamination. Let's look into the food chains. And by the way, like, this kind of goes to one of the arguments in the COVID era, right? We have limited data, and yet now we're getting, in this case, chronic exposure near these high use zones. And I think there was some animal studies, keep me honest here, but it showed reproductive and organ toxicity relative to higher doses of sodium iodide, also higher doses of silver compounds. So like, I think, when we look at things like DDT, right, or glyphosate, right, like all these things that were generally accepted as safe, or whatever the EPA would use for their BS terminologies, right? Like, there's these things that were presented as, even if they aren't guaranteed safe, there's an aura of safety. So is there any merit to the concerns of, hey, listen, I hear you, there's nothing that's a red blinking red light right now. However, that's not to say that, again, the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence.
No, absolutely. I think those are the right questions to be asking. And I think that we can look at cloud seeding specifically as an example of a technology that has been literally happening for decades. And we know from all of that data that it has no effect that's even measurable. So let's first understand.
By the way, I don't mean to interrupt your train of thought, Isaiah. Like, the fact that we are even on a show right now acknowledging that cloud seeding is a thing. Like, if you brought that up on social media 2 years ago, you have everybody and their mother pointing at you, calling you a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist. But like, no, this is real. It is happening. And actually, people are very proudly doing it. So like, I think that's just, it is fascinating to think of how there was the preconceived notion and to where we actually are today. So.
No, that's right. And I was surprised to learn too that cloud seeding was happening literally since the 1970s in the state of Utah, where I was from. Like, I've been drinking that water and like using that landscape my entire life. I grew up in Salt Lake City, and we have all that data from that time, and we know that there's no measurable effects that we can see. And the study that you cited to was a government accountability report that kind of looked at that over the course of time. And we know that over decades that there is no effect that's measurable on the ecosystem or on people's health when you do cloud seeding. I like to think of it kind of like nuclear energy, right? Like, the environmental left has for a long time raised the alarm about nuclear energy as this, technology that's going to kill us all, that the radiation is going to happen. And it's just not the case, right? Like, being around a nuclear power plant is like comparably safe to like being around your bunch of bananas in the kitchen. And it's a similar story. We've known for decades that nuclear energy is completely safe. And you just have, these people who are concerned about it despite the data. And so I think that this is a similar technology. It can help us steward our landscapes better. And we know from decades of use that it's perfectly safe.
You work out, you lift heavy, you're eating clean, but if you're not seeing better pumps, better endurance, or faster recovery, it's probably because you're missing a critical piece. So your body depends on nitric oxide to help push blood, oxygen, and nutrients into your muscles. And when your NO levels drop off, or if you're not maximizing them, it's like training with the brakes on. Less oxygen, weaker pumps, longer recovery. You're doing the work, but your body simply isn't keeping up. And that's where Cardio Miracle comes in. It's an advanced nitric oxide supplement loaded with L-citrulline, L-arginine, organic beetroot, CoQ10, and no junk. Just pure ingredients that synergistically work to increase blood flow, power your workouts, and accelerate your recovery without stimulants or synthetic BS. So if you want to make sure every set counts, just click the link in the show notes, scan that little QR code over my shoulder, or visit cardiomiracle.com/TBNS to feel the difference. And by the way, when you click that link, your discount will automatically be applied. Just look for Shopping with Brian Nichols at the top of your homepage. One more time, that's cardiomiracle.com/TBNS. And now, let's get back to the show. But is it enough? Right. And I guess that's where the concerns really raise up, because to your point, we've been doing this since the 70s, which, I mean, 50 years, that's a healthy data set. But I mean, there are things we're just uncovering we did 100 years ago that had very real negative ecological and biological impacts. And, you know, it's obviously far too gone to make any corrections. So I guess, what is that fine line, Isaiah? Like, what's that fine line between saying, hey, like, we have the ability to do these things, and there is, in the short term at the very least, right? And if we're going to give all the credit where credit can be given, there is a short-term positive. Like, but how do we, I guess, compare and contrast? How do we weigh that relative to the big question marks, the long-term uncertainties? And we're seeing this, by the way, again, going back to the COVID vax, which I'm sorry I keep on doing this, folks, but this is a thing we all literally experience across the freaking planet, right? So we are all now seeing that there are long-term consequences to the COVID vax. I hope I don't get nuked on YouTube anymore for saying that out loud, because it pretty much is like a verifiable fact at this point. So, like, with that being said, is there concern? And if that is the case, like, again, what is that fine line? How do we present this as a hopefully good solution in the short term, while also taking into consideration the big question marks long term?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think that for different technologies, it's different, right? So the US said that we were going to set up the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to regulate nuclear energy when that was expanding. And I think, like, many of us can say that, like, the NRC has gone a little bit too far in how top down and how restrictive they are with, like, regulating nuclear energy. And so it is that fine line. It's finding where we need to be to win the public trust, and to take people's concerns seriously, to make sure that these technologies are used responsibly. And so I'd say that, of course, you know, cloud seeding causes differences in the landscape, right? Like, even if it's just like a little bit more amount of precipitation, it's going to be important that that's done in a smart way. And so smart regulations that allow innovators to, like, really innovate could be something that is appropriate. And, you know, ideally that's happening closest to the level at which it's occurring. And different areas can tailor solutions that's best for them. And so for a state like Utah, where I'm from, cloud seeding has been a really important tool to help mitigate the amount of shrinkage that we've seen in the Great Salt Lake. And so the Great Salt Lake is this big puddle in the middle of Utah. You can think of it that way. It doesn't drain to the ocean at all. And so it's actually accumulated over, you know, thousands of years, huge amounts of toxins actually from the mountains. And if that water goes away, that could wipe out lots of the health benefits that we see in Salt Lake City. You can see huge amounts of arsenic, for instance, that go into the city. And we've seen this actually happen in a place called Owens Lake, California. And so for a state like Utah, cloud seeding is really very critical to make sure that that public health disaster does not happen, while we still can support the things that we love to do, the watering our grass, you know, doing alfalfa production and doing other kinds of agriculture. And so, you know, in a state like Utah, it's going to be really critical to have that available to us. It's going to be really important in other states too, as, you know, we might want to put more rain in one place and you know, to address certain needs there. And so creating water abundance is really quite critical. It's a question of getting it right and at the right level of government in order to regulate that and to win the public trust.
You mentioned shrinkage. As a guy, I hope we are all on the same page that shrinkage ain't good. But I digress. Obviously, cloud seeding, Isaiah, is there's a segue. Obviously, cloud seeding, Isaiah, is more of a topic of conversation right now because of what we saw happen down in Texas. The Guadalupe River went from, like, normal water levels to it raised up over, I think it was 23 feet. Was it 23 feet? It was something insane in a 45-minute period, right? And that people are like, what the hell? How did that happen? And then there was a report, and again, keep me honest here, I'm not sure about the validity of this report, but that there was an organization in Texas who had just done some cloud seeding like the couple days before. So, obviously all the internet sleuths put on their tinfoil hats, and I'm obviously saying that in jest, but saying, hey, does A plus B equal C? And that is where I think a lot of folks right now, Isaiah, are just kind of like, dude, like, we have so much stuff going wrong. Like, can we at least try to fix the things that are broken? And I hear you, like, we can walk and chew gum at the same time, but like, this is this related? And if we can't prove it's not, like, is the juice worth the squeeze, right?
Sure. I mean, and just first off, like, absolute tragedy that happened in the Texas Hill Country and around like Mystic Hills. It's been really interesting to see, and I think admirable to see the leader of the company who was doing cloud seeding, which is Rainmaker, and the leader is Augustus Dorico, being really transparent about that during the entire time. He was continually saying on Twitter, like, there's no way to connect at all the cloud seeding operations that they were doing around that area, again, 2 and 3 days before it was happening, to the tragedy that occurred. They followed all the meteorological safety requirements that happened and stopped the operations in such a way that it's meteorologically impossible that they affected anything in that area. This is a case in point, though, about getting public trust behind it and not reacting to a tragedy in a way that really impairs our ability in the future to address our needs. So I'd encourage anyone to look up Augustus Dorico on Twitter and see how transparent they've been about their operations and how it is a scientific fact that they could not have affected any of the flooding that happened there. But again, I think to the broader point, it's important to react appropriately to these kinds of situations and these kinds of tragedies, right? Nuclear energy is another example. It's really critical that we make the regulations smart in a way that we can still meet our needs. You had Marjorie Taylor Greene, who put out a bill that was proposing to ban all cloud seeding across the country. I look at that and I say, like, that is not a solution that is not any kind of solution that I'm interested in. And it's a solution that really impairs our ability to address a really critical need of water shortages that we're seeing, especially in the American West. Appreciate you bringing that up, and would encourage people to go look into that company and Augustus and the work they've done and the complete transparency that they've provided. Almost anyone on Twitter who was talking about this, he responded to and was able to satisfy them. Like Michael Flynn, for instance, came out and said, like, that's a great response. Thank you for the transparency. It looks like you weren't connected to this.
All right, Isaiah. So we hear the argument, right? Hey, West Coast, or just the Pacific Northwest, or the Salt Lake, Rocky Mountain area, y'all need water. I hear it. But bringing back the dire wolf, help us square that round peg through the square hole, because I hear the argument saying, hey, we need to do these things. Cloud seeding help get the areas like Salt Lake, no shrinkage. But with that, right? Why are we bringing back extinct wolves from Ice Age times? Like, I'm not a Neanderthal. I don't want to see my Neanderthal great grandpa again. Like, hey, that's great that we could, but should we?
Great question. And I think absolutely not. We should not be applying any of these technologies to human beings in a way that, we'd recreate some kind of Neanderthal. That is something that I think that talk about regulation, that's a good place to start to really restrict our ability to interfere here. Okay.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
No, exactly. And okay, so to the broader
that was a really bad Star Wars reference there, but probably one of the worst movies too of the series, and also one of the worst throwaway lines, but I digress. Continue.
So I think to the broader question, is de-extinction a good thing to do, or is messing with nature in a way that kind of brings back the characteristics of extinct species a good thing to do? And I think this is a really interesting question, especially as someone who's interested in conservation itself. And so starting with the question of should we bring back the woolly mammoth? This is a project that the company that brought back the dire wolf is working on right now. I think it's like pretty simple to look at that and to kind of answer that question. So again, what's our North Star? So our North Star is human flourishing. It's how can we enjoy our landscapes and how can we inspire the next generation to take care of their heritage? And what if a mammoth could be a part of that, right? Like that's kind of the question that they're answering. Like, what if we had the ability to take the Asian elephant, to edit it, to make it look and act and be like a mammoth, put it on the North Slope of Alaska, and then America's children could go up there and see mammoths. What an amazing thing that would be. That kind of thing that gets me excited. But there are other benefits too of doing that kind of thing. So there's great evidence that mammoths, for instance, really impacted their landscape and they made it much more productive. And so if you put mammoths back in the landscape, you could have many more musk oxen and caribou and other kinds of animals on that landscape, which would be really good for the people who live in Alaska, for instance. But then there's another point that's really important too. Some people who are interested in the de-extinction conversation are like, that's just a hairy elephant. That's just a big wolf. It's not really like a woolly mammoth or a dire wolf. And I think those kind of objections are fair. And whatever you call it, it's very similar to what the original animal was. But what you also get out of this, and this is the point that I was making in the article, is technology that allows us to conserve existing species that are here today. So I referred to like the American chestnut. This is a species that has nearly gone extinct because of a disease. And what if we could use the technology that they created to make the woolly mammoth and apply that to the American chestnut and disease-proof our chestnuts? This would be like an amazing thing that could be awesome. And there's a similar story actually around the dire wolf. When Colossal Biosciences announced that the dire wolf had been de-extincted, they also announced that they had worked on red wolf conservation. And red wolves are really endangered species of wolf that live in southern Texas and then also in North Carolina. And they found a way actually to clone red wolves in a completely unique way that keeps the current populations of red wolves and red wolf hybrids out in the wild. And this could really create a way for us to increase the amount of endangered species that we have and actually decrease maybe the number of species that we need to keep under the Endangered Species Act because they're recovered. And so I think that this is a win-win potential to develop these de-extinction technologies. And it's even better because it's a private company that's doing this. They're not diverting money away from other kinds of conservation when they themselves are doing the de-extinction work. And so that's my case for de-extinction, is that it could create a really good outcome for the landscapes themselves, like mammoths might in the northern parts of Alaska, and then also that it could create amazing genetic technologies that could help us conserve our species right now and decrease amount of government regulation.
If you're a small business owner with a handful of team members, but a big vision, I'm talking maybe 3, 5, maybe 10 folks tops, most phone vendors will either ignore you or try to upsell you into something bloated and expensive. Yeah, been there. But level 365, they get it. No minimum seats, no pressure to scale before you're ready. Just simple, powerful phone tools built to grow when you do. And yeah, it's still month to month, so no worries about getting locked into something that doesn't fit you next month. It's not about company size, it's about finding the right fit. That's what Level 365 nails.
Isaiah, I hate to be this guy, right? But this is where I personally, and by the way, folks, like for most of the shows you watch, I ask objections because this is the questions you guys are asking. But here, I'm gonna put my own preference and bias here into this. Like this is the part where I get stuck because I hear you, right? Hey, we can beautify the Alaskan landscape with furry elephants. Wow. And there's an argument to be made that maybe they are better for the environment. And oh, by the way, to your point, we can maybe keep things like chestnuts roasting on an open fire, keep that song for another 200 years if we can help save the chestnut from this disease and stop other animals from being extinct. And this kind of goes to, the whole butterfly effect, right? I don't know, man. Like, and maybe it's just that I know what I don't know, and I know that there are things that I just feel we shouldn't touch. And I can't scientifically articulate that, but like in my humblest of opinions, it just feels like some things are supposed to happen as they do, right? And I get very, very, very concerned, especially as a new dad who, my 2-year-old, she's got, God willing, another 100 years on this planet. And with the advancement of technology, as you're telling me, maybe she's going to live to be, 3,000. We'll see. But like, I want to leave this world to be the best it can for her. And
Absolutely.
going into this whole butterfly effect thing, like if we stop the natural progression of things in the pursuit of something we objectively say is good from our human perspective, but taking out of consideration that sometimes things just happen, right?
Yeah.
Like the dinosaurs, they all went extinct. Was it a good thing or was it a bad thing? I don't think that's the conversation. It happened. And I guess for me, I'm looking at this saying like, well, what if these animals are supposed to die out? Like, what if the dire wolf and the furry elephant dying out was a part of our ability to flourish? What if again, like there's only so many variables that we can pull that we actually know we're pulling, but behind the scenes, I mean, we might be impacting things that we don't even realize for decades, generations, millennia. And this is where I genuinely have concern because as we start to take this approach and we start to, again, I know you don't like the terminology, but we start to play God, right? Like where we're bringing back animals that didn't exist, right? And you're right. Like we shouldn't be bringing back our Neanderthal like 16x grandpas because there's a lot of like question marks there, right? I think those question marks carry past the human side of things. I think it carries into other areas as well. Like, when you're talking about bringing back the dire wolf, I'm like, well, what if the dire wolf, and we just don't know this because there's things we just don't know. What if the dire wolf likes eating 2-year-olds, right? Like, what if that's like, delicious. I have to go chase this fast ass deer, or I can go after, I can go to Anchorage, Alaska and chow down a 2-year-old, right? Like these are the things, and I'm not trying to be a doom and gloomer, but just the acknowledgement that there are things that we just will never know, right? And that's okay. And I take it a step further beyond just being okay. Maybe that's how it's supposed to be. Thoughts?
Yeah. So I would say that your concern about unintended consequences in the system is like absolutely valid. And it's something that we should be considering. And that's why, we shouldn't de-extinct a dire wolf and put it in the middle of Yellowstone National Park immediately, which is not what Colossal has done. They're keeping it for now, and I don't think they actually intend to put it back into a wild population area. They're putting it in a wildlife sanctuary that has like a bunch of high fences around it, and are keeping these 3 dire wolves together and kind of
sounds like Jurassic Park,
right? I think that for large wolves, it's a pretty manageable thing. People have guns. We can control things pretty well. I think that if we're entertaining a conversation about de-extinction, whether it's chestnuts, whether it's mammoths, it's really important to get local community buy-in up front and to allow like this to be a bottom-up thing. And so for chestnut recovery, right? Like it's within living memory that chestnuts were around. It's only because of humans, and we know this, that like chestnuts are going extinct. I think that that's like a great example of how intervention from people can make the chestnuts come back and like allow us to like really thrive. But that would really need, I think, like local buy-in for that to happen. And so if like a state like Tennessee wanted to bring back chestnuts, I'd want them to be putting those chestnuts back in the system. If a Alaska Native group in Alaska wanted mammoths back, I'd want them to be managing that, and for them to have huge buy-in in order to make that happen. And so if you do it in that way, and you're not having a federal government coming in and just like dropping animals willy-nilly, I think that's a much better way to do it, and in a way that accounts for these kinds of concerns, and in a way that would allow it to be experimental. It's a good thing that mammoths and elephants have 36-month gestation cycles. Like there wouldn't be a mammoth population problem. With a big gun, you could take care of a problem if there was anything of concern. And so I think that putting those guidelines in place is really very critical, with that North Star in mind of like, how is this going to maximize human flourishing? How can we do things that are dynamic and that can expand our access to God's creation, in my view. And so I think that those are the kind of questions that we should be asking, and while also doing rigorous like studies of what kind of effect this might have, but also allowing local communities to experiment, because I think that's where the innovation happens, and that's how we get the best outcomes.
My final thoughts, and I'll turn things over to you, my man. Like, I guess I'm of the camp of, it's not a matter of could we, it's a matter of should we, right?
Absolutely.
And I definitely hear the argument. Like, I'm actually much more open to the argument of cloud seeding, but maybe for more of those, like, Salt Lake areas where you really need it, right? But like, oh man, I'm getting stuck here on the dire wolf piece. Like, I get it. Like, yeah, we can do it, but should we, right? Like that's where I'm a little nervous, man, because once that genie's out of the bottle, like, how do you get it back in? And like, there are certain things that have happened. Like you mentioned the walnut, the chestnut rather, that was human caused, extinction more or less from a disease. But like, and I know this sounds so stupid to say out loud, but like, what if it's supposed to go away? Like, what if this was God's design to say, hey, like, chestnut, it's gonna fade away, 2025 or so, 2030, no more chestnuts roasting on open fire. You all got to use walnuts, right? Like, maybe that was by God's design. And for me as a Christian, I feel, oh man, we're really starting to get into the, it's not a matter of could we, it's should we. And listen, I'm not looking for you to quell my fears today. I'm just more so trying to articulate that I think from our human perspective, we like to think we know a lot and that we can control things. But at the end of the day, we know, pardon my language, we know jack shit. Like, we know quite a bit, we think, but in terms of like the grand scheme of things, how it all kind of comes together, we're missing pieces. And that's just because we can't know everything. We can't control all the variables. And it's the fact that we can't, which has made me over the years much more, I'm not skeptical of anthropogenic climate change as I am of some of the solutions, right? Like some of the solutions that we present, it feels very much like, listen, I hear what you're trying to do, but should we, right? And I guess, for me, as we end this episode, Isaiah, like my call to action for the audience would be like, hey, if you want to get a little dire wolf in your backyard, okay, right? But like, understand, I mean, this is the Peter Parker, Uncle Ben, right? Like, with great power comes great responsibility. Like, if you're going to play God, and you might not agree with that terminology, but I'm the host, so I'm gonna steer the ship. If we're gonna play God, like, y'all better remember the responsibility that comes with playing God. And by the way, the very real negative potential consequences and externalities that might come with this. And I pray everybody's got all the, the different fail safes in order, because I don't want to necessarily look down my street right now and see a saber-toothed tiger walking by, right? So I think that is something as we move forward, as all this is happening. And by the way, I know this is one of those conversations where the audience is like, Brian, you always say control what you can control. You think you're going to control a bunch of scientists trying to bring back, the dire wolf and the furry elephants? No, I get that, but I can at least be vocal and talk about my very real concerns. So I say all that. I hope, as the audience wraps things up today, that they see, I'm not trying to be a doomsayer. I'm not trying to be alarmist, but I am trying to just articulate a very real concern that I've had for many years at this point, especially when it comes to more of the, we must do something type of mentality. But hey, I'll get off my soapbox. Isaiah, bring us home. Final thoughts. And of course, if folks want to tell you why you're so wrong and I'm so right, just kidding, it's going to be the other way around. What would they want to do there? Where are they going to go ahead and find you?
Great. I mean, I think that you nailed it on the head with the question. It's not about can we, it's about should we. And I completely agree with that. And I think that the question should be, does this action, this environmental intervention, increase human flourishing? And does it do it in a way that's aligned with our God-given responsibility and authority to cultivate the creation? And so that's kind of the closing thought that I'd leave with your audience, who's generously listened to us. I would ask them actually to, if they're concerned about playing God, read Genesis 1. God says, let us make man in our image and our likeness so that they may rule over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the air. In Genesis 2, it says, God put the man in the garden to work it and to keep it. And so that doesn't eviscerate any kind of concerns that we have about unintended consequences. But what it does do is it sets up the idea that human beings are here to cultivate the earth in a wise way. And so we should be completely transparent about any kind of environmental intervention that's happening. We should implement important safeguards like local management in doing it and smart regulations to make it happen. But ultimately, that should be what our goal is, I think. And as we're concerned about, playing God, we should ask, what has God told us to do? And it's to cultivate the earth. So my encouragement to your audience would be to continue to meditate and think about those things. Read Genesis 1, read Genesis 2, and then look into these exciting technologies that are available that are very powerful and certainly could be misapplied. And let's apply our principles to that in a way that increases human flourishing, that protects human beings too. I think that's really important as well. It's going to be important to not apply any of this genetic technology to people in a really bad way, and to forthrightly look at these next couple decades where all these technologies are going to be available to us and ask, how can we use them in the best way possible?
Dude, it feels like we're just getting this close to playing the real life version of BioShock. I don't know, that game might be a little before your time, but I don't know. It's just what it feels like. But Isaiah, do us a favor. Where can folks go ahead, reach out to you again if they want to continue the conversation?
Best place to find me is on X. I guess we're still saying formerly known as Twitter, at Isaiah Menning. Just first and last name, ISAIAHMENNING.
There you go. Not the long lost Manning brother. I was asking him beforehand. I know. I was like, hey, you got a couple million you could use to support the show, Isaiah. That would be very helpful from the Peyton and Eli fund. And Archie fund for that matter. But apparently that's not the case.
No. I'm unfortunately not Peyton Manning's nephew, but I'll let you know if I come across the millions.
There you go. All right. Well, hey, folks, if you got some value from today's episode, please do me a favor. Go ahead and give it a share. When you do, tag yours truly at B Nichols Liberty. You can find me on Facebook, on Instagram, and yes, X, formerly known as Twitter. And by the way, speaking of X, formerly known as Twitter and Facebook, we do our live streams of The Brian Nichols Show every Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you've hit that little notification bell so you don't miss a single time we have a new episode go live. One more time, that's 9 p.m. Eastern. And if you just like to consume your content whenever you want to consume it, that's me. Do it at your leisure. So head over to your favorite podcast catcher, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, wherever it may be. Hit subscribe to The Brian Nichols Show. We air all of our episodes the same days at 10 p.m. Eastern, so about an hour after the show goes live. And then as for where you can watch the show, YouTube, Rumble, and yes, of course, it will live forever over on X and on Facebook as well. Hit that subscribe button. By the way, we are just shy of 15,000 subscribers over on the Brian Nichols Show YouTube. So my call to action to you, all you amazing members of the audience, go invite at least 2 or 3 friends, right? Just 2 or 3, right? And say, hey, there's this show I listen to. It's the Brian Nichols Show. It's a lot of fun. Has a guy on the show every now and then talking about bringing back woolly mammoths and dire tigers and, trying to save the Salt Lake City from shrinkage. It's all this fun stuff. Go ahead and give it a follow when you do. And by the way, folks, I'm obviously joking here, but I really do appreciate all the love and support we've gotten. Last episode we had, as we're recording here today, peek behind the curtain. This isn't actually live. Oh, I know. I'm sorry. But we had our buddy Connor Vasile in the show. I think we got 17K views over on YouTube within the first 24 hours or so. So you guys are awesome. Thank you for sharing the show. And I guess thank you to the overlords at YouTube for actually giving us a friendly algo for once. It's been a long time. COVID really definitely hurt us there on the algo side of things, but that's a different conversation for a different day. Which, by the way, if you did not get the chance to go ahead and check out episode 1000 that happened yesterday over on the Lions of Liberty as well as Brian Nichols Show pages. Yes, I am part of the amazing pride at Lions of Liberty. So if you want to go ahead and check that episode out, please do so. And also go ahead and check out all the other amazing Lions of Liberty shows with our good buddies John Odermatt, Brian McWilliams, and Lou Perez. And of course, yours truly over at Lions of Liberty. One more time, lionsofliberty.com. Isaiah, I have said a lot. I'm going to let you go ahead and get the final words in. What do you want to leave the audience with today?
I leave the audience with an encouragement to continue to think about these things, to think about how we can use environmental tools to our benefit. And then also my final call to action would be check out ACC. So if you go online and it's acc.eco, you can become a member. You can choose to support us if you'd like, as we're building a conservative environmental movement that's grounded in the ideas of optimism, technology, limited government, and in a way that is not really aligned with. It's casting a new vision from what the environmental left has really fed us for a very long time. That's doomeristic and sees human beings as the problem. If that sounds interesting to you, I'd encourage you to find out more at acc.eco.
And by the way, the lovely Daniel Franz, she is the wife of our good buddy Caleb Franz. I guess she's Danielle Franz now.
That's right.
Yeah, not Danielle Butcher like she was. So yeah, go ahead, give them some love. They do some amazing work, and just go ahead and tell her that you heard her good buddy Isaiah here on the Brian Nichols Show when you do. With that being said, thank you for joining us. Brian Nichols signing off here on the Brian Nichols Show for Isaiah Menning from ACC. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Brian Nichols Show. Find more episodes at briannicholsshow.com.